Hey guys, welcome back. The connective story between the middle part of the timeline is perhaps the most interesting part to the series. Clearly, to anybody paying attention, Ocarina of Time, Wind Waker, Twilight Princess, and Skyward Sword are all strongly connected to each other. There are other games, of course, that connect to those, but these games have a central focus in them, which ultimately focuses on possession of the relic of the gods, the Triforce. Even still, connections between these games are loose, some more explicit than others. Today, I am talking about a really interesting connection between Ocarina of Time and Twilight Princess, one that, to my surprise, few in the community have picked up on. In my story though, there is also a warning about taking things at face value. Kick back and relax while I walk you through it. Let's talk about Zelda's teachers. Part 1. The Theory. In Twilight Princess, after you complete the Arbiter's Ground and learn about the sages, the Mirror of Twilight, and the conflict with the Gerudo, you can speak to Aru at Telma's bar. He states the following: "Tell me, did you find anything of interest at the Arbiter's Ground in the desert?" The sages. Those sages once served the royal family, actually. They were appointed as tutors to the young Princess Zelda. It was from them that I first heard tales of the accursed mirror in the Arbiter's grounds. Now this is a real interesting tidbit of lore to stumble upon, but it has even deeper implications if you think about it more broadly. Allow me to explain. You see, we know that Twilight Princess happened about 100 years after Ocarina of Time. If we evaluate Ganondorf's age based on his appearance at the time of his execution, it would seem that perhaps up to 10 years has passed. I like to assume 7 myself. In that time during the conflict, we see that a group of sages has been set up, along with executioner grounds in the desert. A common theory is that the Spirit Temple from Ocarina of Time was converted into the Arbiter's grounds. Regardless of that, it is clear that there is, at a minimum, a new group of sages during the end of this conflict. Looking ahead on the timeline, we can also see that in Four Swords Adventures, that the Gerudo were pushed deeper into the desert because of this conflict, in what is then known as the Desert of Doubt. Coming back to the sages in Aru's statement, he says they were appointed as tutors for the young Princess Zelda. If we followed the time frame of their introduction, which was around 90 or so years before Twilight Princess, then it would seem the Princess Zelda they were the teachers to was not the modern Princess Zelda, but the one from Ocarina of Time. It's even possible that they served as the teachers to the royal family in general. The situation gets a little deeper when you consider the context of the world and the politics of the kingdom around that time. Consider that the kingdom before Ocarina of Time had recently finished a civil war, a war that ultimately focused on who would rule. 3 spiritual stones were handed out at the end of this conflict. Stones that would serve as a key to accessing the sacred realm where the Triforce was stored. This very much makes it seem as though the actual struggle of the Civil War was about the Triforce, and how the Hylians who had it had the ultimate ace in the conflict to ensure their supremacy. So what would happen if their supremacy was threatened? That's where the meat of this theory lies, so let's get to that. Before we do though, are you enjoying the video? If you are, a like and subscribe is the best way to show me you want more content like this. Take a moment to do so and maybe share the video with others in your community. Every single view on this video counts, especially lately. Anyhow, back to the topic. Part 2. Political Power. When the Hero of Time was sent back to relive his childhood, the relic that was secured in the Sacred Realm reacted to his connection to the Triforce of Courage, and thus a Triforce split happened. The pieces went to those who most resonated with their virtues. Link, who had the courage to step forward and present his knowledge to the kingdom. Zelda received wisdom, likely due to her spiritual connection of things, as well as her connection to Hylia from the past. And Ganondorf received power, likely because of a renewed grudge against the kingdom. At Ganondorf's execution, it would seem that Ganondorf and the sages themselves were completely unaware that he was in possession of this relic, going so far as to call it a divine prank. If we look at the behavior of the royal family though, in the events of the Civil War, we can see a very shady side to them. It is entirely feasible that if the hero of time showed up with the Triforce of Courage, it explained what he experienced in another timeline of events, where Ganondorf had the Triforce of Power and laid waste to the kingdom, that they would realize the danger they were in. So what would they do? They would conceal the knowledge of the broken relic, of the key to their supremacy. Thus, it was absolutely important to keep this information secret, to prevent the Gerudo King from learning of the power he secretly possessed. If he learned of it, he could become the threat told to them by the young hero. So the only good option was to play at war, capture the king, and execute him so the relic would leave his possession and return to the sacred realm. Perhaps they even fashioned a special sword for the deed, one that might suppress his power. Given this situation, we could see how a group of loyal Hylians to the kingdom could have been selected to become sages, specifically to instill faith into their kingdom, as well as control the flow of information. Making them the princess's teacher was part of that process. But wait, aren't the sages chosen by destiny and awakened in times of need? I can hear some people asking that in the comments. While in times of turmoil that appears to be the case, we see at least 2 examples of the role being filled by qualified candidates outside of such crisis. Over in Wind Waker, we can see how the vacated positions of the Sage of Wind and Earth are filled by 2 people qualified for the position. Following the events of Ocarina of Time, the sages we see from that game have not yet awakened, had not yet filled the position. And so, if a group of magic-wielding Hylians were equally qualified, could they not fill the role? I can imagine a group being taken to the Temple of Time, into the Sacred Realm by the royal family, even to the Chamber of Sages, perhaps even done by Rauru himself. The new sages could be established, and thus the positions would be filled. Not by a Goron, Zora, Kokiri, or Gerudo, but a group explicitly under the control of the royal family. A group of Hylians, and maybe Sheikah. Alright, I understand that's a lot to take in, but I hope you can see how these connections come about, and see that it all tracks given the history presented. Considering the behavior of the royal family, how sages come about, and what we know about the Triforce, wouldn't this all make sense? Now, let's get into my recently discovered problem with this theory. Part 3. A Mistranslation. Recently, in the Zelda discords I visit, some conflict came up regarding the idea I've presented here. It's because that line that Aru states in Twilight Princess is actually a mistranslation. In the English text, he states that the sages were Zelda's tutors, and from there I drew context added to the theory I've laid out. However, in the Japanese version of the text, it is a little different. When brought up to my attention, I sat down with some friends of mine who know Japanese. Specifically after speaking with Lorulian historian, a satisfying explanation for the root of the mistranslation was found. You see, it's one thing to know that something is mistranslated, but it is another to know how the mistranslation comes about. Without that explanation, people in the community can just claim a translation error to cover up inconvenient facts in the story, and thus the burden of proof falls on them to supply evidence when claiming official work is false. Lorulian historian satisfied that to me, and so now I accept this statement is false. Let's go over it. This is the raw Japanese in the translation by Lorulian historian. Oh, Master Link. Are you likewise concerned about what happened at the desert's execution grounds? As a matter of fact, well before I grew old, I was appointed to work for the royal family of Hyrule and educate Lady Zelda during her childhood. It was about that time that I learned of the execution grounds and the affairs of the accursed mirror kept there. As you can see, the translation is much different than what appears in the English version. The question boils down to, if Lorulian historian's translation is true, then why is it so different from the one that appears in the game? How is it that the localizers came to associate the sages in this dialogue when they aren't actually mentioned in the text? It seems almost like the localizers just made something up or inserted their own headcanon into the situation, right? As tempting as it is to believe that, I have a compelling reason to explain how they reached such a difference. Talking with Lorulian historian, I got to the root of the problem, and it boils down to the use of a single phrase, Rohei. On the surface, Rohei can be taken to mean old man or elder, and in some contexts it can be used to refer to a group. It is also an archaic term not normally used these days, and thus the nuance of the term is at the root of this confusion. In the case of the dialogue here, it would seem that the localizers thought he was talking about a group when Aru was actually talking about himself, considering he was previously talking about what Link encountered at the Arbiter's grounds. The localizers likely assumed the context of the sages as the group/elders, and then erroneously attributed the rest of the dialogue to them. Thus now there is dialogue that states the sages were the tutors of Princess Zelda, instead of Aru explaining he was her tutor when he was younger. Ultimately, this seems like a simple mistake, not say the localizers trying to force their headcanon on a community or something like that. It does, however, highlight the need for skepticism when analyzing translated text. I have to say that such people as Lorulian Historian, as well as other content creators who carefully analyze the Japanese, are invaluable to this community. I honestly wish I had known about this mistranslation years ago, but it is what it is. Now, let's talk about the consequences of this knowledge. Part 4. The Outcome. One of the cornerstones of my theory was Aru's statement about the sages being appointed as Zelda's tutors, even with that now shown to be a mistranslation. Over the years, I amassed more evidence to support the claims of my theory. This is a big hit against it for sure, but the theory is far from collapsing given the other aspects I've brought up. I will concede that some of the other supporting points come from Hyrule Historia and Zelda Encyclopedia, and so if you are of the mindset to throw those books out, you can basically discard my theory as well. However, I will bring up the entire basis of the timeline that we all love is founded in those books. So to throw them away also throws out the foundation they laid for the timeline. I know others have created their own timeline to make more sense of the games, but we don't get to start picking what we keep and discard based on convenient truths of what is written. That simply isn't objective. As such, I choose to keep these books as canon and abide by them until Nintendo gives us something that either overwrites them or invalidates them. That being said, it is important to remember that they are supplementary material, and that stated content from the game takes higher priority in the continuity. The final takeaway from this video is that translators make honest mistakes. They are only human after all. Some blame can be placed on them, but ultimately, we should trust what they put out until their work is proven to be wrong. Thanks for watching the video. This was a bitter one to write, because I had to accept that there was not only an error in Aru's statement from Twilight Princess, but also that the error impacts my theories about the creation of these sages. I'm happy to say that my theory still stands, but I was worried it might collapse. If you have any thoughts on the idea, I welcome the conversation down below in the comments, but please keep it civil. If you like content like this, make sure to give the video a like and subscribe. If you are itching for a deeper conversation about it, I would encourage you to reach out to me by becoming a channel member or joining my Patreon. Doing so will get you access to my Discord, where we can talk about deeper topics beyond the scope of the YouTube comments section. My community is still growing, and honestly, I really need the support. That's all I got for you today, guys. Be safe, and may the way of the hero lead to the Triforce.